Hi, my name is Deshina Buck, and I'll be your instructor for this Introduction to Business course. This is Module 1, and we will be discussing business fundamentals. Let's go ahead and jump right in. By the end of this module, you'll know qualities of a successful entrepreneur, be able to identify change factors in the business environment, and to distinguish between profit and revenue and goods and services. You'll know the difference and similarities between nonprofit and for-profit businesses, and you'll understand the concept of stakeholders. You'll know the 5 functional business areas and their purposes. You'll be able to identify external forces in the macro environment and how they impact business. And finally, you'll be able to apply the pastel analysis to an industry. We'll begin this with a short story. In 1976, there were 2 men who set out to create their first computer. They invested about $1,300 and they set up their business in a garage. About 30 years later, they became one of the world's most influential companies. Together, they took on the risk and they did the work necessary, and they built an empire. It paid off. Some of you may have heard this story. And if you haven't heard the story, then you most definitely know of the people that I'm referring to or the company that I'm talking about. In 2015, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak's garage sensation had earned $233 billion in sales revenue, and it became what we know as Apple Inc., the birthplace of the iPhone, iPad, and MacBook. Why was this duo so successful? And what considerations and decisions did they face along the way? Now, it's helpful to know that Apple did not, everything wasn't smooth sailing all the way through. Rather, it did have its fair share of problems along the way. One of the founders, Steve Jobs, he was removed from the company and from his leadership role after the company went public. He took his $20 million that he had earned throughout the life of the business at that time, and he started a new company. He started a company called Next Step, and it essentially did the same thing. He was still in the personal computer business. Meanwhile, um, Apple was tanking, and so was Steve Jobs' Next Step. Neither company was doing very well. Although clearly Apple had been doing well prior to Jobs leaving, because he was able to take with him $20 million that he had earned while he was a part of the company. Um, so Jobs ended up going back to Apple when the company started doing bad, and he pulled it up out of decline, building it into the empire that we know today. So why was he successful at Apple and not at Next Step? Why was Apple Inc. failing without Steve Jobs, but thriving with Steve Jobs? Was it Apple's products or something about their customers? Was it pure luck? Was it good timing? Was it that Steve Jobs was a certain kind of manager in the Apple environment and a different kind of manager in his Next Step environment? Or was it some other combination of factors that caused this phenomenon where Steve Jobs he made Apple what it is today, but he was not successful at doing that with another company that was very similar to Apple? And how Apple could not seem to succeed without the presence of Steve Jobs. I guess the lesson here is that in entrepreneurship and in business, there are many factors at play. There's many moving parts with the potential to make or break an organization. Being an entrepreneur means understanding the business, environment, and its many moving parts. And organizing and operating the business with the understanding of these moving parts in mind, and being willing to take the risk and the risk necessary to reap the potential rewards. Successful entrepreneurs learn quickly, adjust or adapt quickly, and they improvise quickly in response to a fast changing world. So, what are some of these change factors that Steve Jobs and his partner may have encountered along the way? These change factors that require such an entrepreneurial skill set for the mere survival of a business, more or less to keep a growing and thriving business going. Some of these change factors that occur are technological advances. As technology change, we have to change the way we do business. Quite often that is the case. The demand for corporate accountability and good corporate citizenship is a current change factor. The public is requiring corporations to be accountable for what they do and how they affect our economy and our livelihood and well-being. Um, Another is globalization. We have businesses moving overseas, and we have overseas businesses moving here. We have a level of access to merchandise and to services in other countries and at a level that we never had before. And so these are globalization change factors that are affecting how we do business these days. Also, there's economic impact. Um, the mere threat of recession, high unemployment rates, and these kinds of things. People don't have money. It affects how we do business. And when people have more than enough money, it also affects how we do business. Consider what is currently happening with desktop computers. When was the last time you saw a person, a person who has a desktop computer at their house? You can sometimes still find them in businesses, but home use has become very rare. So this is a result of a widespread and expanding use of mobile technology. What category of change does this fall under? Of course, technological advances. Now, think about what steps you might take if you owned or managed a desktop manufacturing company. Would you close your doors in response to this technological change, or would you adapt to the changing environment? For example, would you begin manufacturing mobile devices, mobile technologies yourself? Or would you continue to manufacture desktops exclusively and try to create or develop a market for desktops? Um, these are the kinds of questions entrepreneurs and managers must face as they strive to maintain successful businesses in response to an ever-changing environment. Now, we know that the primary goal of any business is to earn money, right? Um, in this regard, there are two terms that are often confused: revenue and profit. These are different things used to describe a company's financial performance. Revenue is the amount of business and income earns from sales. Profit, on the other hand, is the amount remaining after costs are deducted. But there are two different types of profit that you may hear business people refer to. There's gross profit, gross referring to like the all-encompassing profit, which includes the money earned from sales minus the cost of those sales, and that is it. So it's all encompassing. Um, Unlike the net profit, it does not take into consideration any other business cost. And so the net profit is pretty much what it says. It's what's left in the net once everything has been sifted through. And the net profit is all of the organization's income minus all of its um, costs. And so that leaves you with net profit. Earlier, we learned that Apple had generated $233 billion in sales revenue by 2015. Where would this figure fit into the revenue and profit equation? Now, it's important to notice that it only indicates that Apple sold a lot of merchandise and or services. So it speaks volumes about their sales ability, but it says nothing about their profit ability. Um, in order to understand Apple's profitability, in addition to the $233 billion worth of merchandise and services that it sold up to 2015, we would also need to know how much it cost them to produce and sell that merchandise. We would need to know how much it cost them to operate if we wanted to know the net profit, the amount of money that was left over for investors. If we wanted to know that, then we need to know all of their costs and all of their income, and then we need to subtract the cost from the income, and that would give us the net profit. If we wanted to know how efficient they were at producing goods, then we would need to know the gross profit. We would need only the amount of the sales revenue, which we already have, $233 billion, and minus the cost to produce, to make the merchandise and services that Apple sold. And that would tell us the gross profit. So of column A and B on in the table here, which one represents the sample company's revenue and which one describes its profit? So A describes the company's revenue. As we can see, there is nothing in the profit category because there is nothing in the cost category. B describes the company's financials in terms of profit. And we can see profit because cost is provided to us. Another relevant distinction is the distinction between goods and services. We purchase goods such as Cokes and other soft drinks, candy bars, fast food, grocery, hygiene, cleaning supplies. Um, these are everyday purchase of goods that most people make. When we go to our hairdresser, get our hair done, or get a haircut, uh, go to the bank, or we get a bank account, hire an attorney or an accountant or a plumber. When we do this is we are buying a service rather than a product. But some business models aren't as easy to distinguish. For example, when you go and get an oil change on your car, are you paying for a service or buying the product that they put into your vehicle? Um, the answer is both, really. Many business models combine service with its product, either because it's absolutely necessary, as with the case of the oil change, um, or because it adds value to their product. So um, think of some other types of businesses that sells both goods and services. Uh, what about businesses who offer warranties with their products or insurance with their products? Because these two are services. A third important distinction is the differences between nonprofit businesses and for-profit businesses. The term nonprofit and not-for-profit can be a little misleading to some people. It may suggest that these types of businesses do not earn money, or that no one benefits from the money that the businesses do earn. Uh, some of the highest paid CEOs include people like Anthony Tersigni of Ascension Health Alliance, or Patrick Fry of Sutter Health. And in 2016, both of these men, their earnings were reported at more than $13 million per year. So although the nonprofit business may not retain its profits, its executives certainly can, through their salary and other financial incentives, um, profit from the business. Um, for profit and nonprofit businesses operate very similarly. There are mainly two differences, and that is in how they use money and in how they get money. For-profit businesses, for example, they distribute their profits to their owners and their shareholders, whereas nonprofits do not do this. They don't distribute their profits to individuals. Instead, they use all of their revenues and income to deliver the services that the nonprofit delivers and to continue operations. So they use it to pay for their office building, to pay their employees' salaries and wages, and then also to provide the services that they provide to the communities they serve. The other difference we said was how they get money. And so for profits, typically they'll raise funds through investments and loans. People will invest in the business in exchange for a part ownership in the business. Or the company will borrow money from a bank. On the other hand, nonprofits, they raise funds primarily through donations and grants, but they may also take out loans and lines of credit when necessary. As we mentioned earlier, in business there are many moving parts. There's people and groups inside the organization, people and groups outside of the organization, and all these have the potential to impact the business and be impacted by the business. These can be separated into two groups, although these two groups are not distinct. Participants are individuals whose functions are necessary for the business to operate. Participants include owners and shareholders, employees, and customers. Owners and shareholders invest money. They create and refine the business idea. In some cases, they started the business. They determine the overall direction of the business. Sometimes they operate the business and they hire employees to accomplish their vision. Employees work to reach the owner's goals and vision. Customers pay for the goods and services that are produced by the employees with the owner's money. And the owners, in return, they get to generate and keep the profit. Stakeholders are any person or entity potentially affected by a business's operations. Stakeholders include participants, but they also expand out into other groups, such as contractors, suppliers, lenders, policymakers, society as a whole, are all stakeholders. Now, the thing about stakeholders, and remember that these are people that can affect the business and that can be affected by the business. Okay, so these stakeholders all have different wants and needs and expectations for the business. For example, customers may want low prices. Owners and lenders may want to see higher profits. Um, Policymakers might want the company to produce more jobs. contractors and suppliers will want them to sell more stuff, because if the company sells more stuff, well then they will purchase more product from these suppliers. And so they want them to have higher sales and business growth, but they may not necessarily be concerned with their profit. Um, Overall, business success benefits all the stakeholders, and its success must be measured by how well the business delivers to all of its stakeholders. This means that a company must create jobs, earn sales, grow, earn good profits, and deliver acceptable goods and services at prices that customers are willing to pay. Now, understanding the main functional areas of the business gives us a better insight into how businesses can successfully please all of its stakeholders. There are 5 different functional business areas that work together to deliver to each of the company's stakeholders. Um, the first of which is management. Management plans, organizes, leads, and controls the company's resources in order to accomplish the owner's visions and goals. Operations converts resources to consumable products and services in accordance with with management's plan. The marketing department identifies customer needs and designs suitable products specifically to meet the needs and expectations of customers. Um, they make sure that the company is producing what customers will pay for. And also they make sure that the price of the product or the service is reasonable enough that a customer will want to pay for it. Um, Accounting, the accounting department measures, summarizes, communicates, and advises the company regarding its finances. It helps to determine how much money is needed and how much can be spent. It also helps to keep up with how much sales revenue is being generated, how much what the profits look like, what's the company's efficiency in terms of finances, and how much cost is the company generating. Uh, but there are 2 different types of accounting. There's financial accounting and there's managerial accounting. Financial accounting is concerned with its external facing, which means it produces financial statements, for example, for the purpose of external use, outside use. And it is concerned with the big picture of the company's finances. This branch of accounting provides financial statements to external users, as we said, and it looks at the overall performance for some period of time, which is usually quarterly or yearly, um, or maybe over the span of a number of periods. Managerial accounting, on the other hand, is an internal facing accounting branch of accounting, and it's related to the day-to-day financial needs of the company. Managers can use the information from managerial accounting to make sure that they are achieving the financial goals of the organization on a day-to-day basis, and to find new ways to grow profit. So managers can look at could use managerial accounting for things such as how much are we spending on marketing, how much are how much is it costing us to produce this product, how much is this product, how much sales is this product bringing into the organization, and how much profit does this product generate. And so the managerial accounting answers those types of questions. Whereas the financial accounting answers kind of like the bigger questions. How well is the company doing? How much profit did the company generate? um, how much how much how much money are the company's investors earning. So it answers those types of questions in regards to the company as a whole. But managerial accounting can get us down to the nitty gritty so that we can understand each product, each division, each department, each cost, each expense, etc., depending on what area of management we work in. Last but not least, the fifth functional business area is finance, and it's responsible for planning, obtaining, and managing company funds. Where accounting keeps up with how the company performs financially, the finance department is responsible for deciding how much money the company needs and how to raise that money, how to use that money. Um, and so this is not pertaining to revenue, but the finance department is not concerned with revenue explicitly. They're concerned with getting new funds into the company that can help the company to generate more revenue. So we're talking about like borrowed funds or the sale of stocks, getting new investors in the company and things of that nature. Now, in the case of nonprofit organizations, finance may also handle like grant writing and fundraising and monitoring funds generated from fundraising events and things of that nature. Another level of understanding necessary to operate a successful business are external forces. Now, these are different from change factors, although they do have a lot of overlap. With change factors, we're considering some of the same uh, conditions, but we're focused on how those conditions are changing. Um, with change factors. Here, we're talking about the external forces that make up the macro environment. And this concerns the big picture, external factors that businesses, entrepreneurs, and employees cannot control. They include government forces, economic forces, consumer trends, public pressure, and technology. A good example of government forces is when new laws go into effect that change how businesses must conduct themselves. For example, Walgreens is a pharmacy. Laws are being currently being proposed to try and curb the opioid epidemic. Should Walgreens executives be concerned with these proposed laws? If so, why? If not, why? And so these different macro environment for environmental forces causes business managers to have to assess the situation, assess what kind of impact these external forces that they have no control over might have on their business, and then try to adapt and figure out ways to make it a positive impact when possible, or to avoid any negative impact. One way to analyze a business's macro environment is to use the Pestel analysis. With it, we can assess the effects of the macro environment on the micro environment. Now, the micro environment, we haven't discussed it, but that simply means the internal business environment. Uh, it answers the Pestel analysis answers the question: how will the things that I can't control impact the things that I can? And the things that we can't control is the macro environment. The things that we can control is the micro environment. So, armed with this information, business leaders and entrepreneurs can be better prepared to adapt to the changing environment by taking advantage of opportunities that these changes create, and also protecting the organization against the threats that the changes create. So let's conduct a simple Pestel analysis for company X. We can then try and make some assumptions about the conditions of Company X's industry. All right, so here are some simple considerations that we want to make. And we're going to start with A, which says Company X sells mini doll houses. How is this related to the macro business environment? Well, simply put, it's not. This is a micro environment piece of information. So it's talking about the company sales, but the company sales doesn't, that's something that is within the control of the company. And so it's irrelevant to the pastel, which is used for and analyzing the macro business environment. B says company Y was the largest doll manufacturer, but due to low sales and no profit, Company Y will no longer manufacture their dolls. So how does this relate to what external factor does it relate to? And we put here social cultural because it's not exactly clear at this point why sales are down, but we can always assume when there's no clear connection to make in these external factors, it's probably social culture, which means people are changing essentially. People are doing things a certain way, and that is affecting um, how businesses function. It's affecting the market. And so in this case, apparently people just simply aren't buying dolls anymore. So we put it in social cultural. In C, it says surveys indicate that children between the age of 3 and 12 are shifting from playtime to screen time at alarming rates. Well, now this might explain why the doll industry isn't doing so well. But this again, we have a social cultural, so people are changing, right? People are not doing the same things they used to do. So social cultural, but also technological, because children are trading in playing with toys for playing with devices, with technological devices. And so that's contributing. And both of these are threats to Company X's dollhouse industry because the dollhouse industry relies on the sales of dolls. And if the sales of dolls are being reduced, then they can expect that the sale of dollhouses will also be reduced. The D says a market for miniature houses is suddenly booming in America. Well, miniature houses and doll houses, it may be easy or simple for the company to transition from making doll houses to making miniature houses, or possibly producing both. They may be able to apply the same process, production process, to both products. And so this is good news potentially for Company X. And so they're going to put it in the opportunities column here as a opportunity, even though the doll industry is going down and the dollhouse industry is surely going to follow. There's an opportunity in the miniature house industry. And so in E, it says a material that Company X uses to construct doll houses is being banned because it contains an excessive amount of a dangerous pollutant. And so here, there's a couple of things that we have to deal with in E. First thing that stands out to me is that it's being banned because it's a dangerous pollutant. And this is an ecological concern, so an ecological factor. So we're going to put E in an ecological factor, but I also see that the material is being banned, and so this is also a legal and a political factor, and so I put it in all three. Now, we can look at the whole situation just by kind of examining this simple chart and deduce that the dollhouse industry is probably in decline and we have to start making some changes if we're going to remain competitive and remain open. And it's due to several macro factors, um, including the decline of the doll manufacturing industry, the decline of children playing with toys, the um, the ban on the material that the company uses to make houses. All these things indicate that bad news for their doll house industry. But on the other hand, a related niche market for miniature houses has expanded. And this is an opportunity that the company that we may want to investigate further to see if that opportunity is right for company X. Now, keep in mind that where we put an item, it's very subjective. Sometimes there's a lot of overlap, and sometimes there's not an exact place, and usually that's because it's a social, cultural. As I said, people are changing. Something about people is affecting how we do business, about people's choices, and that would fall under social, cultural. Um, but it's not important how we characterize. What's important is that we have the information, we know the information, and we adjust for the information. And this concludes the Module 1 Business Fundamentals.